Anyway, so why don't we get started?
Yeah.
We had read the first verse of chapter 19, where we see how upset David is. He has just found out that Absalom is dead, and he was actually killed. If you remember, he's riding on his horse, and his hair gets caught in the branches, and then it is Joab, and with the help of some others, who actually kill him. And so when he finds out about it, he's extremely upset, and he's mourning, and he says, "My son Absalom, my son, my son," and he, wishes that he had died instead of him. And now we're going to see what the effects is of this. Okay, so let's start with verse 2. Joab was told that the king was weeping and mourning over Absalom, and the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the troops. For that day, the troops heard that the king was grieving over his son. So let's just remember what this means. Okay, Absalom has led a rebellion. He has dethroned the king. He has forced the king to flee for his life. And there's a small group of people who flee with David. Okay, and they have gone with him into an exile of sorts, and they end up crossing the Jordan, and they're going up a bit on the northern end of the Jordan Valley, on the eastern side of the Jordan, and they're in Machanaim. Okay, that's where they are at this point. And you had, thanks to the fact that God's intervention, and Absalom, instead of listening to the advice of Achitophel, listens to the advice of Hushai, who is David's plant in Absalom's camp, and therefore launches a war that is much easier for David to win. And indeed, David wins this war, but it's all these people that are fighting for him, that are not only loyal to him and left the city with him, but are fighting for him. And they won, right? And they won, and Absalom is dead. And instead of gathering the troops and David saying, "Oh, congratulations, everyone. Thank you. You fought for me, and I'm so proud of you. And thanks to you, we're going to get the kingdom back." Okay. He's mourning and crying, and Absalom, and I wish I had died instead. And so here's these troops who just risked their lives for David, and they hear David mourning for the enemy. So when we're reading this, we can really understand the tragedy of a son rebelling against his father. And I think David's mourning resonates with us, because we can really relate to the fact that this is his son. But for the troops, this is not good, for the people around him. And so that's what it says here. The victory that day was turned into mourning for all the troops. Suddenly the troops are so excited about victory, and here that's plunging them into this atmosphere of mourning. And verse 4, and the troops stole into town that day like troops ashamed after running away in battle. In other words, they end up responding as if they're the defeated, not the ones who won. The king covered his face, and the king kept crying out loud, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Joab came to the king in his quarters and said, "Today you have humiliated all your followers, who this day saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines, by showing love for those who hate you and hate for those who love you. For you have made clear today that the officers and men mean nothing to you. I am sure that if Absalom were alive today and the rest of us dead, you would have preferred it." Okay, he's making a very, very strong statement here. Now, I want to actually, it's very interesting, the Hebrew of this verse, okay? Now, there's the word lo, or the word lo is spelled, for those of you who know Hebrew alphabet, lamed aleph, and it means no, okay, or negative, okay? There is a difference in the Hebrew, in the Masoretic text, there's a difference and a question mark as to what was this lo supposed to be. Was it supposed to be lamed aleph, which means negative or low, or not, or no? Or was it supposed to be lamed vav, which means to him, but that doesn't really make sense. But the same lamed vav, okay, can be read lu, and lu is if. Okay, now the English translation goes with the if, because it's saying if Absalom were alive today. But there's this other tradition that is also in here that says, because Absalom is not alive, okay, because it says either if Absalom were alive or Absalom is not alive, okay, because Absalom is not alive, and all of us are dead, and that's good for you, okay. That doesn't make as much sense. So really, the English translation, I think, is very is the right one. But I think there's something interesting about also not just say if Absalom were alive, but to also say Absalom is dead. Hello, David. Absalom is dead. This is the man who was trying to unseat you, and he is dead. Get over it. Okay. So I look at this being able to read it two ways. Okay. Now arise, come out and placate your followers, for I swear by the Lord that if you do not come out, not a single man will remain with you overnight. And that would be a greater disaster for you than any disaster that has befallen you from your youth until now. So here we say Joab taking the leadership. Now, we saw Joab take leadership before, if you recall. He took this kind of leadership where he basically said, oh, we got to, David is in a bad way. What was he in a bad way? When Absalom ran away to Geshur. If you remember, Absalom, this whole story started when Amnon raped Tamar, who was Absalom's full sister, and Absalom kills Amnon. And as a result of that, David, again, he's got this special relationship with Absalom. Even though Absalom murdered his other son, he seems to have more sorrow over the fact that Absalom has now run away than at the fact that Amnon was killed. Okay, there's something about Absalom that pulls at his heartstrings here. And at that point, he's also like in a funk. And Joab is the one who gets him out and says, okay, you got to call Absalom back. Okay, you got to bring him back. We got to end this. This is crazy. And he listens to Joab. Ironically, when he listens to Joab, that paves the way for the problems we're in now. Okay, bringing Absalom back is what enables the rebellion to go forward. And when we studied this, we questioned whether Absalom was already preparing this rebellion when he was sitting in Geshur, or whether when he came back, he was hoping that his father would welcome him and all would be good between him and his father. And indeed, while he welcomed him and he kissed him on his head, then he still didn't, he was out of the palace and he didn't talk to him for 2 years. And so that could be what started this rebellion, not earlier, but just then. Whatever, that remains an open question. But I just find it very ironic. Joab is always the one, he's looking at what's going on now. He has very astute political sense, and he understands that this is not good now. And so he, again, says to David, get out of your funk and act like a king. But again, is this a good thing that he's doing now? Is not a good thing, and we'll see as it moves forward. But it's a very similar, we see this as Joab. Okay, so the king, verse 9. So the king rose and sat down in the gateway, and when all the troops were told that the king was sitting in the well, it says gateway, yeah, in the gate, whatever, all the troops presented themselves to the king. So we have now that he's sitting there and basically enabling the troops to pass before him. And the assumption is he is now saying to them, congratulations, thank you very much. You saved my life. You saved the kingdom. Okay, and that's what's going on here. So he's able to correct what has happened. And the final, again, the translation is problematic because the word here, my translation says all the troops presented themselves to the king. Now the Israelites had fled to their homes. When indeed the Hebrew word is the nation. The first one instead of troops is the nation and Israel. And these were the words that we saw until now. The nation refers to the people who left with David from Jerusalem. They are referred to as the nation, which is interesting. They're certainly not the nation. They're just a small group of people that support David. And Israel refers to the people who have joined Absalom. So this is really what's saying here, that the people with with David, and they're in Machanaim, okay? They come before David and he's congratulate them. Whereas the Israelites, all those that were part of Absalom's troops, they have been defeated. They all flee and they go home. That's it, dissipates. And we talked about that also last time, that this is a classic of an ancient, the way things were done. Once the king is dead, the war is over. And we saw that also later on. I mean, we haven't studied this together, but if any of you remember how Ahab is killed, also he's in the middle of battle and he's killed by Aram, and they prop him up a little longer. He asked to be propped up so that people won't realize that he's dead. And so the fighting can continue. And then at some point, the word goes out that he's dead, and then just everybody dissipates. That's the end of it. And so this is what we're seeing here. Okay, so now, what happened? Wait, before I go forward on this, I want to we talked about Joab, we talked about his role, both in the fact that he killed Absalom, and he also is the one who really talks to David and gets him out of his funk, okay? But I would like to just quickly reference at the end of David's life, in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 2, David basically instructs Solomon a couple things that he wants him to do. And he says he wants him to kill some people. Let's see what he's saying. So this is 1 Kings, chapter 2, verses 5 and 6. Further, you know what Joab, son of Tzeruiah, did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's forces, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Yeter. He killed them, shedding blood of war in peacetime, staining the girdle of his loins and the sandals in his feet with blood of war. So act in accordance with your wisdom and see that his white hair does not go down to Sheol in peace. At the end of his life, David leaves instruction that his son Solomon should kill Joab. Now, I remember when I first saw this, seeing the amazing sorrow and really terrible mourning, and over again, David says, Absalom, my son, Absalom, my son, Absalom. And he was repeating that. I wondered, why is it, if he's already going to blame Joab for something and to instruct his son to kill Joab, why he doesn't mention because of the fact that he killed Absalom? He only talks about these other two. Now, I don't want to talk about Amasa, because Amasa is a story coming up. We'll be dealing with that next week, probably next week or the week after. Okay. So I don't want to actually go into that story, but the story he does mention is the story of Abner. Okay. And if you'll recall, what happened with Abner was they had just made peace. The side of Saul, this is the fight. The remnants of the house of Saul are fighting against David, and there's really a civil war going on. And Abner comes to a point where he realizes that this is a hopeless war, and he makes peace with David. And he comes to David, and David assures him that he will not take revenge on him, and he can leave in peace and nothing will happen to him. And as Abner leaves David, after they've come to this peace understanding, after David has assured Abner that he will be protected, he bumps into Joab. Joab, not knowing what just happened, okay, doesn't check, doesn't ask, and kills Abner. Okay, so here, this is the way I look at it. What's the difference? He kills Abner. Joab kills Abner for two reasons. Okay, one, he kills him because he led the fight against David. But the other reason he kills him is because of his brother Asael, who Abner has killed and part of this war between, and Abner really tried not to kill Asahel, and Asahel kept running after him. And Abner says, don't do this. I'm much stronger and better than you, and he kills him. And it was really a fair fight. It wasn't like Abner looked to slaughter Asahel. But Joab is his brother, so it's like almost like a revenge killing or whatever. Okay, that's why he did it. So now let's see, why is it that Abner killed Absalom? And here we have it. And again, this was actually a verse that I recalled last week, except I didn't write what the verse was. Here I have it. This is chapter 18, verse 16. Yeah, verse 16. And this was a situation when we read this verse, I noted that it was very badly translated. The English that I have says, then Joab sounded the horn, and the troops gave up their pursuit of the Israelites, for Joab held the troops in check. Okay. Whereas what the Hebrew actually says is that Joab saved the nation. And again, this translation is, every time it says the nation, it says troops, because it's trying to distinguish between those who are with David and those who are Israel, who was with Absalom. But what it says here is that Joab saved the nation. When he killed Absalom, he enabled the war to end. And I think, therefore, David realizes that. And so is sad and is as tragic it is that he has lost his son. He does not blame Joab for that, because he realizes that he stopped the war. And so in this case, I think Joab acted wisely and admirably. And I think also in his pulling David out of this mourning, he was really looking out for the interests of the nation and the interests of David and the need to rally the people who are with him and then get back the kingdom. Okay, so I think just wanted to bring that. Okay, now with verse 10, we start really into a new story. It says as follows: all the nation, again, it uses the word the nation, but here it probably has a different meaning. All the nation throughout the tribes of Israel were arguing or were discussing, okay? So here the question is, who is the nation and who are the tribes of Israel? So you could say that the nation are the people who are with David, and they're arguing with the people, the remnants of the other side. Most commentaries, though, do not agree with that and believe, because of the context, that all of this refers to those of Israel, those who had been part of Absalom's camp. We learned before that they each dispersed all back to their homes. So this is describing a situation. The army is dispersed. They're all sitting at home, and they're arguing within each other. And they're trying to say, okay, what do we do now? What's the situation? David is still in Mahanaim. He has not yet returned to Jerusalem. Absalom is dead. We're in a no man's land situation. What is going to be? And so what this verse is telling us is a sense of confusion that is within the nation, the whole nation, okay? And it says here, some said, the king saved us from the hands of our enemies, and he delivered us from the hands of the Philistines. And just now he had to flee the country because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Why then do you sit idle instead of escorting the king back? Okay, so what it's referring to, and that's why I think it can also be those who supported David, because it's clearly this conversation is being said, presenting we need to rally around David. But it's in a way even more powerful if it is a conversation amongst those who supported Absalom, where some of the people are saying to the other people, we're idiots, okay? Here's the king who all these years of his kingdom saved us from our enemies, successfully defeated the Philistines, and then we supported Absalom, who made him flee, okay? But now Absalom, and it says here something we didn't know before, whom we anointed over us. We don't have a description before this of an actual anointing, but it's very possible that when Absalom went to Hebron and gathered everybody and blows the the shofar to let's go to war. It could be that as part of that, he also has himself anointed in Hebron, which makes sense because we said there that he goes to Hebron on purpose to kind of mirror how David began his rule in Hebron. And so it's very possible that he also makes sure someone anoints him in Hebron to really complete the picture. Anyway, so he says, whom we anointed over us has died in battle. So he says, okay, number one, we went against this king who really was quite good to us. And number two, the guy who we were with has died. So why are we sitting around? We need to re-crown the king. We need to make sure that David realizes he has the support of the nation, which is also very interesting because what we're learning from this is that David is kind of waiting to see what the people have to say. We're used to thinking about a king as a despot, as a tyrant, of someone who does what he wants. But in the case of David, and I would venture to say that this is probably the Israelite culture, okay? A king may be an absolute ruler, but he rules as a servant of the people. And therefore, he's not going to rule unless he knows he has the people's backing, okay? And we saw that also, Saul was anointed 3 different times. The last time, it's the people that actually appoint him or crown him king. David as well. There are a number of different times that he's anointed, and the final time, the people themselves say, we crown you king. And so that's, even though like David's appointed by God and so is Saul, they're both actually anointed by Samuel. But it's very critical for David or for any king of Israel to succeed is that he has the nation's backing. So it seems that that's what's happening here, that David is waiting, and this is the conversation. So verse 12, the talk of all Israel reached the king in his quarters. So King David sent this message to the priests Sadok and Abiathar. Speak to the elders of Judah and say, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace? Now here we learn for the first time that when it talks about all the tribes of Israel, it doesn't include Judah. This is the first time that we see a split in the use of these names of Judah and Israel. Years later, after the death of Solomon, when the kingdom splits, that will be split into 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. There's no split going on here, but perhaps there's a sort of a hint going on that these fissures within the nation, there is a Judah and there is an Israel. And it's already kind of presented here as a sort of a hint. But on its face, he's actually turning to Judah because that's his tribe. And if you'll recall, when he was fleeing from Saul, and even when he was at the Philistines, he continued to have good relations with Judah. Now, some of the people in Judah betrayed him, but on the other hand, he was sending them spoils, things that he succeeded in his exploits against Amalek and others on behalf of the Philistines. He would send the spoils over to the elders of Judah. So there was always this special relationship between him and Judah. So he sees that there are messages coming from Israel, but he's not hearing from Judah. And he's saying, why would you be the last to bring the king back to his palace? You are my kinsman, my own flesh and blood. Why should you be the last to escort the king back? And to Amasa say this. This is a message now to Amasa. Who is Amasa? Amasa is someone from Judah who's actually a sort of, as a nephew. It's another nephew because there's another sister, Abigail. We learned about Sruya is David's sister, and she's the mother of Joab and Avishai and of Asael, okay? But there's another sister, Abigail, and she's the mother of Amasa. So Amasa is David's nephew, Absalom's first cousin. Amasa joined Absalom in this rebellion. So here you have somebody, Absalom's also from Judah. So you can imagine that Judah itself is probably most divided because there's a Absalom is from Judah, but so is David. And so there's a rift here. And so you kind of sense that maybe that's why they're more hesitant because they haven't, as a tribe, figured out how they feel about all of this yet. And he turns specifically to Amasa, who he knows was part of the rebellion against him. And he says, you are my own flesh and blood. May God do thus and more to me if you do not become my army commander permanently in place of Joab. Well, this is very interesting because it sounds like he's firing Joab. And we don't know anything before, anything after this, at this point, about the fact that he wants to fire Joab, but he wants to hire Amasa, who went against him, and he wants to now say, okay, you were against me, but now I want you with me, and I'm going to even give you a very high position in my army. So Amasa swayed the hearts of all the Judites as one man, and they sent a message to the king, come back with all your followers. What we see here is a brilliant political move. He already understood that Amasa was a very pivotal character. And if he could get Amasa on his side, he could win all of Judah back. And so he's willing to put aside his grievances against Amasa, who went up against him, in order to bring back the nation. And we're going to see that kind of behavior in David as the story progresses here, because of this. He is in a situation now where the nation is disarray. There isn't this grand call, everybody, we love David. We have people saying, well, he did well for us, we should bring him back, and Absalom's dead, so he's won the war, but it's not like everyone is saying, we love David, come back, David, please save us. He has a problem in the nation. And so he's identifying ways to kind of put behind them this rebellion and this terrible rift in the nation, so that he can come back and rule over a unified nation. And this is his first step by bringing Amasa back into his camp. The king started back and arrived at the Jordan. So now, after he's done that, and again, we're talking about, we used the words before, escort. And what is going on here is that he's still sitting in Mahanaim, and he wants these people not just to say, yeah, we agree with you, but that actually physically escort him as he comes back to Jerusalem. And that will enable him to make a much more powerful entrance back into Jerusalem. So here he goes. He leaves, started back, and arrived at the Jordan, and the Judites, from the Judeans, it says Judites, but it's the Judeans, went to Gilgal to meet the king and to conduct the king across the Jordan. So let's understand the geography a bit. He's coming down the eastern side of the Jordan. He's going to cross over at Gilgal. Gilgal is the very same place, or it's very close to Jericho. And it's the place where the nation of Israel camped. When Joshua crossed the Jordan River near Jericho, they camped in the Gilgal. So the Gilgal is just north of Jericho. And so he crosses in that same area. I think it's very symbolic. That is almost like a new entry, he's coming into the nation almost as if he's recapturing it, he's got to come back and recapture the nation. And that's where he goes. And the people from Judah meet him, coming from the west, meet him at the Gilgal. Now, directly across from the Gilgal is probably more accurately Benjamin, okay? So Judah goes north and then across, okay? But Benjamin is very short. And we're going to see, though, as he comes across, if you'll recall, when he left Jerusalem, he was traveling through the territory of Benjamin to get to Jericho. And the people he meet along the way are all from Benjamin. Now, Judah may have gone to escort him, but again, as he comes back up to Jerusalem, the people he's going to meet are all from Benjamin. Let's see, should I continue with this? I think I'm going to end here, because that's what we're going to start then with verse 17, which begins his return to Jerusalem and the various people he meets. I don't want to stop that in the middle, and we've already gotten to 6:30 anyway. So we will take it up next week with verse 17 and David's return to Jerusalem. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment about Joab.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
I have a comment about Joab.
Okay.
You said that Joab held the people back or saved the people.
Right. So I'm saying they saved the people.
Yes. Right. So that Joab. So I think you said that David didn't hold it too much against Joab because he recognized that Joab had saved the situation.
He saved the nation. He stopped the war. Right. Yeah. So
do you think,
which was not what happened when he killed Abner.
Yeah,
And later on, he's going to, the same Amasa that we have here,
yeah.
he's going to
Do
kill
you
Amasa as well.
think that in the meantime he may have heard a bit more about how Joab died from perhaps some of those who were present, and this is starting to turn his mind? He
You mean
realized
how Absalom died?
yes, because he hit him with darts, didn't he? A number of darts, Joab did.
Well, not darts, some kind of a stick, some kind of a spear that's made of sticks or something.
Yeah, perhaps he starts to realize that he hadn't just died in the heat of battle, but it was a deliberate action by Joab going
No,
against
he
what.
knows, no, he knows from the beginning already that that this is what happened. Let's see. Let's see, where is it? He does find out. It was in last week's in chapter 18. I'm trying, well, I have to find it.
Verse 14.
Where is it?
Verse 14.
14?
I think so.
No, that's how he killed him. I want to see where it is that that David finds out. Here we go. Okay, here it is. I'm finding it. Here you go. Step aside, suddenly stepped aside. So it doesn't know, it doesn't say here specifically that he knows that Joab killed him, but it does say, he starts by saying, he saw a whole, let's see, he saw a whole crowd around him. What does he say? He says, praise be the Lord of God, who's delivered up the men who raised their hand against me. The king said, is my boy Absalom safe? And Achimat says, I saw a large crowd when your majesty's servant Joab was sending your servant off, but I don't know what it was about. So he knows Joab was there. Okay. And then afterwards, we have this other guy that says, the Lord has vindicated you today against all who rebelled against you. And he says, is my boy Absalom safe? And the Cush, may the enemies of my Lord the king and all who rose against you all rose against you to do you harm, fare like that young man. So he knows that he was really targeted. Okay. And it's a sum, you can know afterwards that he realizes it was Joab who did it. I mean, at the end, in his instructions to Solomon, he says he killed Absalom. So he knows. He definitely knows.
I just wondered how the process worked, whether, he'd suddenly struck him or whether it's a dawning realization, there's more.
No, well, what happens in the story is that his head is, his hair is caught and he's like hanging there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then he gets cut down. And then they don't know what to do with him. And Joab says, no, kill him. And they start killing him, like just beating him. Okay. And then he's still alive. So then he goes and he really just kills him. So I think it's much more by ineptness. You can say that it's a divine punishment for what he did, but I don't think Joab was asking to give him a torturous death. I think he just instructed them to kill him and they weren't very good at it. Anyway, any other questions? Okay, so we will see you again next week. And we will then continue in chapter 19, where we left off, which was verse 17. Bye, everybody.